Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. So, I talked about two monster films by Universal that were based off of very iconic gothic horror stories. Now I'm going to talk about the one that is an original movie, but follows a scary premise. For that, I have to talk about the process that isn't related to movies. Mummification. The process of mummification is one utilized most prominently in ancient Egypt. The process itself involves removing all vital organs from a dead body, allowing said body to dry out, then wrapping it up and placing it in a sarcophagus for a journey to the underworld. It's a fascinating and simultaneously graphic process. So much so that after the discovery of King Tutankhamun in 1922, Universal decided to make a monster movie about it. Not only that, but the iconography of the movie actually established an undead mummy as a Halloween monster. There's a mummy in practically anything from the likes of Scooby-Doo, Phineas and Ferb. A mummy named Murray appears as the main character in Hotel Transylvania films, voiced by CeeLo Green and Keegan-Michael Key respectively, and some larger franchises like Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones, and the weird Indiana Jones parody in Lego Johnny Thunder. All of this spans from one singular 73-minute film, and its legacy led to so much, including one of the best action movies ever made, Fight Me! But, with all that importance, does this movie hold up after 91 years? Once again, it is time to find out. No restraints on spoilers, because I'm not letting them stay in that sarcophagus forever. This is the 1932 monster movie, The Mummy. A team of British archaeologists led by Sir Joseph Whemple, played by the late Arthur Byron, discovered the mummified remains of an ancient Egyptian prince, Imhotep, played by the late Boris Karloff, who played the monster in Frankenstein and voiced the Grinch as said before, along with the legendary scroll of Thoth. When one of the archaeologists recites this scroll aloud, Imhotep returns to life but escapes. Several years later, he is taken on the guise of a wealthy man as he searches Egypt for his lost love, who he believes to have been reincarnated as the lovely Helen Grosvenor, played by the late Zita Johann. Like its two predecessors, The Mummy is just over an hour long, 73 minutes like I said before. Now, here's the billion-dollar question. Did this movie lean towards being more like Dracula or more like Frankenstein? Well, unfortunately, this was more in quality closer to Dracula. I'm sorry, I really wanted to like this one, but it's just too short for my eyes. Not only does it feel shorter than both Dracula and Frankenstein, it's true in Frankenstein's case, but not in Dracula's, but it also is really boring. A short and boring movie is not a good sign for a monster movie. At least with the previous two movies, I was on my toes, less in Dracula's case. Here, I was just underwhelmed and disappointed. I think I know the reason why, but I'll get to that later. For now, let's get into the main analysis, and I'll explain why this one just didn't work for me. So let's start with the characters. These have got to be some of the most underwhelming and boring characters for a monster movie. I know Sir Joseph is supposed to be based around real-life historical figure Lord George Carnarvon, but I didn't really see that much of the Lord in this character. He's just sort of there to be the Ashigadu for the mummy to kill. He dies in a well-done death, mind you, but he's still just there to be killed. Dr. Muller, another doctor played by Edward Van Sloan, who's been in all three of these movies, my god, was the pseudo-Howard Carter figure, but doesn't do much, seeing as he only has a few minutes of screen time. He's nowhere near as iconic as Van Helsing or even Dr. Waldman. Yeah, I went there. The female lead, Helen, all she does is lie down on a couch, moaning in pain, gets kidnapped, and has some weird neurological connection to the long-lost love of the mummy. Yeah, I won't give Stephen Sommers too much credit because he pulled that shtick off in his Mummy sequel, but I get to the defense of the 1999 movie enough already, so there you go. As far as Frank goes, besides being played by the forgettable actor who played Harker in Dracula, he's a lame hero and doesn't do much else here. Enough said. Now, we finally get to the titular villain. Like Dracula and Frankenstein, the highlight of the characters comes from the monster, and Imhotep does not disappoint. He's not as good as Frankenstein's monster, but Boris Karloff did such a good job at making Imhotep intimidating and mysterious. That being said, I'm not the biggest fan of his design. I got what they were going for, but he didn't look intimidating to me. When he did look intimidating is when they had that close-up on his face. It's an iconic shot, and one people always bring up when discussing monster movies. So there's that, I guess. So, yeah, the characters are not that great. As a matter of fact, I'd call them the worst cast of the Universal monster movies thus far. But I'll see what kind of shenanigans the Wolfman and Creature from the Black Lagoon offer in order for some much-needed redemption. Moving on to something more positive, the production is pretty good looking. The Egyptian Museum, artifacts, the way they show mummification, and even some of the effects still hold up to this day. It's quite impressive, actually, and it looks better than most movies nowadays. I'm looking at you, Flesh. Now, unlike its predecessors, The Mummy has a soundtrack. Kinda. They use the theme from Swan Lake, which is what Dracula used too, but I didn't mention it, in the opening, and there are snippets of music here and there too, but nothing mind-blowing. It was good to hear some music at least. And finally, as far as the scare factor goes, some of the kills are off-screen, but some are actually on-screen this time around. Watching Imhotep kill Sir Joseph with his telekinetic abilities was really cool, and watching Imhotep slowly fade away into a rotten skeleton was also amazing. Other than that, it was quite tame and something not worth noting. Now, I'm going to tell you what really makes this movie less notable. Now, it's because we have a better Mummy movie in the form of the 1999 movie. It has better characters, better music, a better tone, and a better, scarier, and ruthless monster in the form of Arnold Vosloo's great performance of Imhotep. But I'm dedicating my true thoughts on that movie and its sequel to their own videos. So stay tuned for that sometime later down the line. But still, that is my Mummy movie, which kind of makes me not really care for this one. Don't get me wrong, there's some semblance of quality in this, and it is important, but it's a film I don't think I'll ever rewatch. So for that, and all its problems, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. A lifeless and empty shell of a sarcophagus.
Well, that's it for this review. Please feel free to give your thoughts on the movie below, and tune in next week when I take a look at something way more impactful, important, and amazing. You'll see what that is soon. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.